So, you have a number of choices. If you're considering this approach, there are a number of choices. You have to think about your target audience. First of all, they are those groups that we've referred to primarily today. The investigators, the research nurses, the pharmacists, other support roles, ECG technicians, lab technicians, etc. You also need to think about who they are, where they are, and what it is they need. Because the investigator needs something very different from an ECG technician. So you need to think about modular allocations. And by that I mean you will have a range of modules that are appropriate for investigator training. And you will say modules 1 to 4 are appropriate for the investigators. Modules 2, 3 and 7 are appropriate for the pharmacists, and so on. So you give people what they need, not what they don't need. And that actually really improves the uptake from your investigational site staff because you're not wasting their time. You're thinking about what they need to know and giving it to them, but not overloading them with a wheelbarrow full of documentation that they have to plough through. So continuing on the theme of choices, you can buy resources off the shelf, or you can have them created as bespoke. You can produce them in-house, and a number of companies are doing that themselves, or you can source a specialist supplier or suppliers, because you need not get all of the elements of your virtual training from one source. It can be useful to do that, but you may wish to pick and mix. How do you deliver it? A lot of people still like discs. Now, a lot of people think that that's very quaint, particularly Daniel, but discs have moved on. There's CDs, DVDs, now Blu-ray discs, of course, and there are some advantages. There are always pros and cons with these things, aren't there? But can be some advantages with discs. Think about on an aeroplane, for example. If you're travelling, a disc can be a very useful way of transporting information and accessing without the problems of connections. Also, one of my colleagues in the audience was saying how useful it was to have a disc with presentations on them, so they're held as a resource. And if you are to be inspected, then a disc gives you something to offer that is tangible and sometimes makes people feel very secure in the quality of the offering because it can be reproduced, which is more difficult to do with a live event. Web delivery, however, I think everyone should consider, even if it's only part of the solution, because web delivery enables you to track who is doing what, where and when. It is hugely powerful. So you can track people, you can test people, you can accredit, certify. In one case, we've been asked to track the time that learners are spending on particular modules that we're providing, because those individuals are claiming enormous amounts of overtime. So the client has said, we're not entirely convinced that they're spending 26 hours a day on this, as they claim. Please, can you verify that? So we're now going in, reprogramming and tracking. Moving on, newer methods. Of course, they're e-newsletters. We talked about the newsletters. With e-newsletters, you can get it to people faster, more cheaply, and you can actually check who's been in and who's read it, who's received the updates. Other approaches, podcasting is becoming far more acceptable. And I read recently that the Oxbridge colleges are now putting their core lectures, their core curriculum, on the iTunes library. So it may be that in the future one may think of moving forward to broader dissemination. Kiosks, I think, is fairly futuristic and not something that we've done as yet, but you can see that within the next 3 to 5 years, who knows? And mobile dissemination, text messaging, video messaging, all sorts of things. But I think the real answer lies in hybrid approaches. By hybrid approaches, I don't mean any one of these things, nor do I mean just virtual delivery. I think the answer is really in that dreadful phrase of blended approaches. And I'll talk about how that can work, and we'll show you examples of that.